Viva AfriForum, viva! The agents that change the trajectory of a life from the direction of destruction to a direction of safety and prosperity are not always clearly identifiable as messengers of the good Lord. Sometimes a reviled devil inadvertently plays the role of a Messiah as judged by admirable final outcomes. I am sure Christians have a way to craft an appropriate biblical narrative to fit this situation. Afrikaners have not always been the most admirable people in South Africa. Their reputation is compromised by the history of apartheid. Yet they also knew when apartheid could no longer be sold to the world and abandoned it when they still had a military capacity to defend apartheid for a long time. The manner in which the Afrikaners abandoned apartheid was patriotic. They placed the interests of the country above their greed and above their personal safety. There was no guarantee that the new government would respect the new constitution and not succumb to the temptation to take revenge. However, no one could have predicted that the new ANC government would immediately begin to recreate a new version of apartheid, which favored ANC cadres at the expense of everyone else. Today, the Gini coefficient proves that wealth inequality between the filthy rich cadres and the poor is much higher than apartheid era inequality between whites and blacks. The legal instrument which the ANC uses to enrich cadres at the expense of everyone else is the BEE laws, which enable massive corruption in state procurement. The cruelty of these laws is that they are zealously defended by poorly educated blacks who are too dumb to realize that the laws are only intended to enrich top ANC cadres and their associates at the expense of everyone else. The unprecedented BEE-enabled corruption has collapsed the economy. When the Afrikaners abandoned their apartheid, the economic problems it had caused were minor compared to the economic problems caused by the ANC version of apartheid today. If the ANC was half as patriotic as the Afrikaners were in 1994, they would realize that it is time to abandon their apartheid to save South Africa. But ANC cadres are too greedy to do that. Instead of acknowledging that the time for their BEE apartheid is up, the cadres have taken to blaming whites for the poverty of blacks, though whites abandoned power and their apartheid 30 years ago. The threats to shoot and kill farmers and confiscate their land without compensation are part of these frantic attempts to shift the blame to whites for everything that is going wrong. This attitude is shared by all the splinters of the ANC, which I call the comrade parties. They are nothing but factions of the ANC. That is why the ANC does not have the courage to stop Malema's racist threats of violence against other race groups. The demonization of whites has ensured that the majority black vote consistently goes to splinters of the ANC, including the EFF, which is headed by the demonical Malema. International sanctions played a pivotal role in persuading Afrikaners to abandon their original apartheid. AfriForum is now attempting to use the same method of anti-apartheid struggle against the apartheid of the ANC. Whether they are bright enough to realize it or not, most blacks are also victims of ANC apartheid. For example, the current unprecedented unemployment is a direct result of this apartheid. So if it takes sanctions to end ANC apartheid, so be it. Even if it takes spreading the exaggeration that there is a genocide afoot against Afrikaners, so be it. The only treason I'm aware of in South Africa is the relentless looting of state resources by the ANC. If this looting is stopped, we would have a budget surplus without threats of higher VAT. Blacks should be out in the streets encouraging and bolstering the diplomatic offensive of AfriForum in the USA. I say power to AfriForum. Viva AfriForum, viva!